Member from Chilliwack North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, here we are back-to-back Chilliwack on Bill 25. This bill is presented as housing reform, but what it actually represents is something very different. A sweeping centralization of power in Victoria at the direct expense of local governments, as we've heard, rural communities, neighborhoods, and the residents who live with the consequences of land use decisions. Over the last several years, we have seen this government advance a pattern. Bill 44, Bill 47, and now Bill 25. Each bill chips away further at municipal authority. Each one replaces local knowledge, local consultation, and local accountability with mandates drafted by people far removed from the communities that they are reshaping. Bill 25 is simply the clearest and most aggressive expression of that trend so far. The government insists that this is about solving the housing crisis, but if you look at what the bill actually does, and more importantly, what it overrides, it becomes clear this is not a housing bill at all. This is a control bill. It strips authority from councillors and mayors who were democratically elected to represent their communities. It sidelines official community plans that took years of public consultation to create. It imposes unfunded infrastructure pressures on towns that are already strained. It forces a Vancouver-centric template onto every corner of British Columbia, regardless of geography, transit, weather, topography, or local capacity. Communities across BC are not interchangeable. Prince George is not Vancouver, Chilliwack is not Mount Pleasant, Quesnel is not Kitsilano, etc. Each one of these communities has a different transit reality, different roads, different utilities, different wildfire risks, different snow loads, different workforce needs, and different planning histories. Bill 25 ignores all of that. One of the most striking ways this bill detaches itself from reality is the attack on off-street parking requirements. The bill prohibits municipalities from requiring even a single parking space for duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and other multi-unit forms mandated by the province, even in areas where transit is weak, non-existent, or impossible due to geography or weather. For many communities in British Columbia, parking is not an optional feature of development. It is a basic requirement of daily life. In Prince George, winter snowbanks make street parking impossible. It is literally against municipal bylaws. In fast-growing suburbs, families rely on vehicles to get children to school, activities, medical appointments, and shift work. In rural and northern communities, trade workers travel with tools and equipment in their trucks. Nurses drive to night shifts, mill workers commuting to remote sites, contractors moving equipment. None of these realities disappear because Victoria declares that off-street parking is no longer needed. Those vehicles will not vanish. They will spill onto streets, school zones, boulevards, bike lanes, and emergency routes. They will obstruct plows and emergency vehicles in winter. They will intensify conflict in neighborhoods already struggling with congestion. Municipalities have already raised this concern loudly and repeatedly. Port Coquitlam pushed back on the very same theory underpinning Bill 25, the idea that there is too much parking and that eliminating requirements will magically reduce car use. Mayor Brad West captured the problem perfectly when he said that believing this requires ignoring the evidence of your eyes In West Vancouver, Mayor Mark Sager warned that zoning all of British Columbia from Victoria is an error. These are not fringe voices. These are long-serving, experienced municipal leaders saying the same thing. This province is overreaching, and Bill 25 takes that overreach to a dangerous extreme. Density done responsibly requires infrastructure. You cannot force significant rapid densification onto streets served by water and sewer lines from the 1950s and 60s without creating serious risk. You cannot add hundreds of people to wildfire interface areas without reviewing evacuation plans. You cannot transform neighborhoods with narrow roads or steep grades without compromising emergency access. You cannot pile additional units onto aging storm drains without planning for floods and washouts. Yet Bill 25 does none of this. It mandates density while pretending infrastructure is someone else's problem. Specifically, the problem of municipalities already struggling to maintain their systems. And here's where the government's credibility truly falters. A contract posted on the BC Open Information website shows the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs hired MNP for $26,000 to run a financial risk and controls review of the short-term rental registry. Mr. Speaker, if the short-term rental system was solid, the ministry would not need a big firm to tell them where the risks are. They would know. They should know. That is their job. They built the system, they run the system, and yet they had to bring in outside help just to explain their own program back to them. Another contract shows the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs paying $10,000 for monthly executive coaching sessions. Coaching at a time when towns are told to stretch every dollar and do more with less. Yes, Mr. Speaker, both contracts, the MNP review and the coaching, were signed this year on April Fool's Day. I am not saying that means anything, I'm just reading the date off the page. Maybe the coaching was meant to help the minister understand the very programs they keep hiring firms to review. Hard to say, Honourable Speaker, but when outside firms keep explaining the programs and coaching shows right after, you start to wonder who is actually running these systems. And as I look for housing-related contracts across the ministries, because housing work often touches more than one ministry, I found even more examples that tell a bigger story about how the government runs its work. One contract has the Ministry of Jobs and Economic Growth paying $133,000 to make 4 economic development videos and the photos that go with them. Another contract shows $60,000 for the creative work on those videos, the scripts, the storyboards, and the plans. Two video contracts, almost $200,000 for 4 videos. So let's lay this out. $26,000 for MNP to review a system that the ministry built, $10,000 for executive coaching, $60,000 for creative video work, and $133,000 for the videos themselves. Mr. Speaker, that's over $229,000 in contracts, and not 1 cent of that helps a town add pipes, fix roads, build parks, or hire staff to handle the load of new homes. This government keeps hiring consultants to do its work, consultants for planning, consultants for risk checks, consultants for videos, consultants for messaging, consultants to clean up old laws. And now they want towns to trust them with new powers under Bill 25. They spend on coaching videos and reviews, but they do not spend on the core work that towns need: pipes, roads, transit, parks, and staff. Mr. Speaker, when a ministry keeps hiring firms to explain its own systems, fix its own programs, build its own messaging, that is not strength, that is not leadership, that is not planning. And it raises one clear question. If they cannot run the programs that they already have, how can towns trust them to run the sweeping powers granted in Bill 25? This is not about one contract. This is about a culture of outsourcing the work, outsourcing the problems, outsourcing the fixes, and then downloading the costs onto towns. And the truth, Mr. Speaker, is my colleague from Abbotsford West, our critic for AI and new technologies, could probably sort out half these systems before the government signs its next consulting contract. But the government never asks because advice is free, consultants are not. Mr. Speaker, municipalities have been explicit. Their staff are overwhelmed. Instead of processing permits or planning infrastructure upgrades, staff are spending their days explaining to provincial bureaucrats why certain mandates will not work in their community, why timelines cannot be met, why provincial assumptions collide with local reality. This is not partnership, it is administrative chaos. Local governments are already facing aging water lines, storm drains, sewer mains, supply chain delays, skyrocketing construction costs, and wildfire risks. Think of Calgary's massive 2024 water main break. Every city across Canada looked at that and understood this could happen anywhere. Yet Bill 25 adds hundreds of new units onto failing infrastructure without so much as acknowledging who will pay for the upgrades. Residents deserve to have their voices heard in shaping their neighborhoods. Instead, this government has eliminated public hearings for key development types and now seeks to eliminate local planning authority entirely. People have the right to speak about what happens on their streets, in their communities. Bill 25 extinguishes that right. Communities across this province, north, south, rural, urban, are telling the government that this approach will not work. They are warning that the bill is impractical, unaffordable, unplanned, and fundamentally disconnected from local realities. Mr. Speaker, I will conclude by saying Bill 25 is not a housing solution. It is an overreach. It imposes density without infrastructure, obligations without funding, and mandates without local knowledge. It replaces trust with coercion and replaces collaboration with control. For these reasons, for planning reasons, economic reasons, democratic reasons, and the long-term well-being of communities across British Columbia, I cannot and will not support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.